All right. Hello, everyone. I want to thank you all for joining us for another Great Money Monday. Every Monday, we come to you with some actionable insights on how we can help you on your financial independence journey. And so, one of the bigger things, we got a little echo. One of the bigger things is when we're coming to you and bringing these actionable insights, we want to bring people who have done it, people who are on their journey, people who are really living. And it really depends on what you look and see financial independence to be. So some people are saying, I want to be financially independent. I want to retire early. And some people want financial independence so they can really live life on their own terms. And so that is something that truly our next guest today can say that she is doing. And so I'm so happy to have, and I know a lot of you probably already know our guest today, but we have Ms. Mable Taplin. She is the founder of DiscovHer LLC and Joanie Girls Heart non-for-profit. She earned her Bachelor's of Nursing from Howard University and Master's of Nursing from North Park University. In her spare time, she loves to curl up with a good book, try some new recipes that are all inspired by her travels, and dance in the rain. Above all, she enjoys traveling the globe, forging friendships, and making children laugh at airports around the world. Having traveled to over 54 countries, Mable is determined to use her life experiences, lessons from her travel, and medical expertise to inspire women all over the world to create a unique path to freedom, passion, and purpose. Thank you so much for being with us today. I'll turn things over to you, Mable.
Hey, everybody. Thanks so much, Roslyn, for inviting me to participate and to share my story. I'm really excited to be here. And I wanted to take an opportunity I see that it looks like there are 3 people on the line. And so there's an attendee. Let me see, Blessed, Chuck Sorgi, Cafe or Keith. Did I say your name right? I like to chat. So I like to chat. So I like to chat. So any questions that you have, please feel free to put them in the chat. So today we're going to be talking about how to bankroll or fund your dream life. And in my case, my dream life was living outside of the United States and figuring out how I could maintain some semblance of what I thought my lifestyle should look like outside of the United States. So in 2016, I quit my corporate job and I sold all of my stuff, turned my living room into a boutique and sold 90% of my clothes, and also moved out of my house in with a girlfriend so that I could save money to travel around the world. And let me just give you the backstory of why. I'm from Chicago, from the south side of Chicago, and I'm a registered nurse, but I haven't done patient care in a really long time. I was actually working for a medical device company. And so if you can imagine working as a project manager / consultant and running a nonprofit for 5 years, it was almost like I had 2 full-time jobs. So essentially I was burnt out and I felt like I could no longer maintain the pace, number one. And number two, I was in my late 30s, unmarried, with no children. And so I started to ask myself, what is it all for? Like, because I did want a family and I did eventually want to get married. And so it was just kind of like, okay, I'm in a job that I don't necessarily care for, right? And so how do I figure out what I really want out of life? And I was emotionally drained from dealing with microaggressions at work. Now you can imagine that I didn't know that they were called microaggressions. I just knew that I was getting sick at work and I was tired of white people and things that they were saying and doing to me, right? So I didn't have the language to describe it. However, so the motivation for me to start to change my money habits had everything to do with regaining my power, because I felt like I had to stay in a certain situation because I did not have a financial cushion, number one. Number two, I felt like my lifestyle defined my personhood. And so who was I outside of this house and all these things that I had acquired? And so I just really in my mind was like, I'm gonna opt out of all of it. I'm gonna just see who I am outside of everything that's familiar, including these here United States. Okay. So I said I was a project manager. And a large part of what I perceived as some of my stressors was I was very controlling and I needed to have a plan about everything. And plans are nice, but the planning was really a coping mechanism for anxiety, right? And so with that, I had to force myself, okay, well, what am I going to do if I don't have a plan? What am I going to do? How can I heal myself emotionally and allow the money part of it to come to fruition secondarily to my emotional healing? Because my spending habits were directly related to my anxiety and these big quick fix it dopamine releases, right? So I couldn't change my spending habits without addressing my emotional bankruptcy. Does that make sense? Tanisha in the chat, Roz in the chat.
We had a couple people even in the Facebook group talking about, yes, I feel it. I definitely have had that burnout, that I'm tired of it, that feeling. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, and so I realized I needed to change something. I just didn't know what, right? But I was sitting in my house looking around at all this stuff, this art, this, everything, this nice mirror that I done paid $2,000 for. And I just looked around and I was like, God, if my soul costs this much, I don't want it. If it's gonna cost me my soul, if it's gonna cost me my happiness, my mind, my will, my intellect, I don't want it. So I'm sharing that backstory because when we define what our dream is and we define the why for our dreams, we need to be mindful of the shadows, the emotional shadows that we're dealing with that may be influencing what we actually think is our dream, right? So for me, deciding to sell everything and deciding to start to save money to reposition myself to leave the United States was me challenging this paradigm of what I thought I really needed, right? Which takes me to, because I'm on a fire journey, but it was like, okay, I'm trying to retire with $2 million in the bank. Let me work myself, these 11 jobs. And once I started selling stuff and my stress went down, I was like, maybe I don't need what I thought I needed, right? So let's get into the logistics of how I came to decide how much money footnote. Homegirl had been dreaming about having her dream wedding since I was 17 years old. They set you up. My 17-year-old senior project from high school was to come up with a budget and design my wedding with my mom. Okay, 17. So at 17, which was in the early 1990s, that's crazy. In
the 20th century.
Ma'am, okay. My wedding then was gonna be $25,000. Who was this kid? Who? In 1994, you want a $25,000 wedding? Yeah, Mabel. I had horses and carriages. I was hook, line, and sinker the princess, right? So think about that. That's setting up my expectations. So when I got my first job, I started a Roth IRA and I was contributing to it. But in my mind, I did buy my first house. That was the first dip. right? And then the second one was like, okay, I'm gonna use this money for this wedding. Ma'am, I hit about 38 and I was like, I ain't got no prospects. Some of this money about to fund this dream around this world. So that was in the back of my mind that I had been saving this money for a wedding. And I was like, I'm denying and delaying my happiness based on somebody else. Because what if these my young years where my hips still work right? What if he don't come? I'm waiting until I retire. We're going to stop this madness right now. All right. So I want to have that disclaimer that I did have. I decided to take, in addition to the money that I saved, I decided to take $20,000 out of my Roth as my cushion, right? Because that was going to be, I don't know what the world is going to do once I get out here, but at least I'm going to have 20 grand in case it don't work out, right? So that was my emergency fund, okay? So that was my bottom. So then the next set of money, I was going to save as much money as I could. So to give you some context, I was making $98,000 at the time, okay? So no kids, no real write-offs. Okay, so that $90,000 is important because I was able to save $30,000 in 6 months with these things that I'm about to tell you that I did. So to start, the emotional drama or trauma that I had to reconcile was comparing myself to my friends. And I had to commit to the not listening to these voices in my head that said, if I didn't buy the best gift for whatever party I was invited to, it was not an indicator of my self-worth, i.e., oh, my friend, the baby shower, I got about $100 gift. Ma'am, you do not. You don't love you whether you buy the $25 gift or the $100 gift. But these were all things that I had to reconcile, right? I had to reconcile that I was on Facebook and I would be looking at what my friends was doing over the weekend, what my friends, they went on this trip and that trip. All of those things would play in the back of my mind. And they were honestly distractions for me because I was constantly comparing myself. And I didn't know that I was comparing myself, right? My comparison led to me establishing hobbies like collecting art because I wanted the socialization. Now, don't get me wrong, I love art. But ma'am, I had filled up all the walls in my house with art. And so I'm still going to art events. And as a matter of fact, my friends started challenging me. Like I started hanging paintings that I bought in my friends' houses. I'm at my friend's house now, and she was like, don't you buy, I'm running out of wall space. But it was the emotional impact of buying something beautiful because I really was hiding that I was depressed, right? And so I want these quick fixes. So a part of getting ready to make these financial commitments is that I had to deal with my underlying emotional vulnerabilities. So we're going to learn today strategies for saving money, the 2 most common things that kill your dreams and take money out of your pocket, how to save money without thinking about it, and then how to earn extra money when you already have it. So I had to make 3 agreements with myself. Number 1, stop spending money before I get it, ma'am. That direct deposit hit, I done already spent it. So, Mable, you got to stop that. You got to, because I be counting money twice. Not only did I spend it, but in my mind, I done spent that same $5 3 or 5 times. So make a plan and commit to doing the plan, and then reward myself when I hit milestones in the plan, right? The other agreement that's not here that I had to make for me, which I needed, is I gave my best friend the login to my bank account, and we made a pact that if I wanted to spend more than $1,000, I would have to talk to her about it. So she was my accountability partner. Okay. So 30,000 is a lot of money. Things that you might think I've never had. For me, I had never had more than $5,000 in my bank account. I didn't necessarily think that I was good with money because I didn't have a formal financial education. And then other times that I had set financial goals for myself, I hadn't met them, right? So all these levels of self-doubt I had to overcome. And I had to overcome them by affirmations. So I had to develop these sayings. I am great with money. I can manage my money. I am resourceful. I'm wise and I am discerning, right? And so I had to start. For me, what I started doing was I would say those things and record them on my iPhone and then let them play when I would be walking, to because I was very intimidated by money. You ask me anything about healthcare, I got 2 degrees in it, I can run it off. Money, my best friend, she has a degree in finance. I'm like, ask her, we freaking practice. She can tell you. And so I decided that I had to stop opting out, right? And so with that, I needed to set a money goal and a timeline. We always talk about that with the FIRE goal, right? You got to know what your FIRE goal is. You got to know what your milestones were. And here's what else I've learned. Now, this happened in 2016. So I'm 5 years removed and I've developed better habits. But one thing I figured out this year too, is that I went to the whole other extreme of not buying anything. And so then I was miserable for them. I was like, I like dresses. We're going to have to compromise. My one girlfriend, because my friends was all bought in too. And they like, you can't have, girl, I would fly on the airplane to go shopping on the East Coast in New Jersey because they don't have sales tax. And so my girlfriend, because I gave them permission to check me, she was like, you going to die with a bunch of dresses and no money. And I was like, I'm gonna be fine though. So years later, I've had to pivot and say, okay, I can't be so strict with myself. Like we started making compromises about how I could spend my bonus. Like I could give one bonus to myself. But in the beginning, I was trying to knock everything out, right? So if you are at the beginning, which I don't think a lot of you are because you're in this group, but I would say, learn how to cut yourself some slack so that you stay motivated, right? When you set these kinds of fiscal goals. So my goal was to save $30,000. And actually I had a year timeline and I did it in 6 months, but I broke it down into increments of small goals. So my monthly goal, it was actually 18 months, was $1,667. Man, my mortgage before I moved out of my house was $2,200. When I moved out of my house and rented a room for one of my girlfriends, she charged me $450 a month. I thought I was rich.
That was it.
Because I've been out of my parents' house since I was 16. I've been paying bills since I was 16. So I ain't never paid, even in college, I wasn't paying $450 a month.
But I love that. That's the unconventional. I mean, when we talk about how are you going to get there, that's the unconventional. And it got you there.
It got me there. It surely, that $450, I thought I was like, why didn't I do this sooner? Right? So that was the first thing, is that my goal was to save $1,700 a month. And so that was my biggest expense, was moving out of my house. The second thing was I established a separate, like I called them ghost checking and savings accounts, right? Where I would not, they were back then, now they're more popular, but they were online based, like Capital One was very newer. And so what I did was I wouldn't let them give me a debit card. And then I started making my direct deposit to that account. So it wasn't easy for me to get the money. So I had to put these barriers in place. So I automatically deposited 50% of my every check into that account, right? And then I was saving on top of that. So I had 2 bank account recommendations. I like Charles Schwab because they don't charge any ATM fees. They don't charge any ATM fees when you taking money out or when you using another fee. And that was something when I was traveling just regularly, I would always rack up on ATM fees when I would travel abroad, right? Because one thing I knew for sure is it was cheaper for me to take money out of the ATM than it was for me to do the currency exchange. So that's the footnote, a travel hack for anybody that likes to travel. Always go to the ATM and take your money out. I particularly want you to have a Charles Schwab account if you can have one. They check your credit, but it's better because they will reimburse you for all the fees, right? The fee that they charge you for actually getting the money out, and then Charles Schwab doesn't charge you a fee. So you saving money twice with Charles Schwab, okay? The other thing that I really, really like about Charles Schwab is that it's a high interest checking account. So you can move your money from there and your brokerage accounts, etc. So I talked about the automated savings, and I didn't carry debit cards. Also, and these began to get popular later on, but I was members in Digit, Acorn, and Capital, right? So the Capital one is the one where it'll help you save based on you charging. So if you spent $2.49 at Starbucks, then they'll round up and take the remainder to the next dollar and then invest it. So I was able to save $1,000. Tell you how much money I was spending, right? In 6 months from that rounding up, I was able just to spend $1,000, and then they reinvested it. And you pay like, I think it was like $2.99 a month then. It's a higher fee now, but I got in when it was first started. The other thing that I needed to do was reorganize my bills. So let me just tell you about, we always talk about money mindset. I grew up watching my parents write out their bills on the back of a bill, right? It was simple math. This how much my check is, and this how much my bills are, right? And it seemed like they were always short. So when I became an adult, I was never short. So I thought that because I was never short, I was fiscally responsible. Does that make sense? Because my parents didn't teach me anything about money. So I'm getting this by osmosis. I just knew ballpark figures. This is how much money I make. I know that I ain't gonna bounce no checks. So I thought I was winning, okay? So in organizing my bills, I needed to actually look at what my bills were. What was I spending my money on? What could I live with? What could I live without? I had a home phone. Who has a home phone in 2000? I had a home phone because my mama had a home phone. Like, it didn't even make sense for me to have it, but I was still picking up things that I learned in my childhood. I didn't even have a reason why I had them, right? So I had cable and internet. I was never home. I don't even watch TV. You want to know the kicker? I ain't own a TV. Why was I paying cable? I had a boyfriend, and when I broke up with him, I gave him his TV back. And still cable bill. So organizing my bills helped me discover where I was just leaking money, right? And then my personal maintenance. I was so committed. So I like to get my nails done, my hair done, facials. I committed to not getting my nails done. Now I got a whole unibrow. Y'all can't tell. That's fine. That's fine. But I committed to not getting my eyebrows waxed every week. I went from every week to every other week. And then I stopped getting my nails done altogether to save money. And I cut all my hair off. I did the big chop. And I told my hairstylist to teach me how to do my own hair because I was going to be traveling and I might not. And she dyed it like blonde. That's how I started wearing my hair blonde. She dyed it blonde. And then she was like, go ye forth and be great. So I was saving because I was paying about 100, almost 80. I would buy, she would sell me hairstyles in packs of 10. So I would, anytime I had something to do, I was running to the hairdresser like I was rich and famous until my 10 ran out. So that would be like $600. Ma'am, that's going into this savings account. So after I organized my bills and I looked at I did have credit card debt. I had $3,000 worth of credit card debt. And let me tell you, that's the other misnomer for me then. I didn't realize it was never my goal not to have credit card debt, right? It was my goal to be able to pay more than the minimum. And as long as I paid it off within a certain amount of time, I was good, even if I could afford to. You know why? Because my parents never had any credit cards. I was just doing this. It was like, oh, the bill comes, I could pay on it and my credit is not going to go down. So I didn't have any guidance, right? So I'm like, you got to pay this credit card bill off. So I paid my credit card bill off in 3 months. And my student loans is still the only loan that I have. But what really helped me pay off everything else quickly was that I put my student loan in deferment. So a lot of people don't know, I had federal loans. So I never took all of my deferment time when I first graduated from college. So that means that I could be in deferment and the government would still pay my interest. So I used that time, the extra money from my student loans, because my payment was $300 a month, to help me pay down my credit card bills.
I don't think people even know they can do that.
Huh?
I don't think people even know they could do that.
Oh, you could do that. You could do that. You absolutely could do that. It's supposed to be for a hardship, but when you have, so there's a difference between deferment and forbearance, right? So the government, if you have a federally funded loan, they give you a certain amount of time, and I think it's 18 months after you graduate. But you can look to see, you could temporarily delay it for up to 3 years. Direct subsidized loans, subsidized federal and Stafford loans. I have direct subsidized loans, so the government paid my interest, and I applied for a deferment for a whole year. So that year, all the money that I had been paying my student loans, $275. They had me on a lifetime payment plan. $275 is what I was paying. So I took that money and deferred because it didn't cost me anything. It didn't cost me any extra interest to defer it. And I took that money and paid off my high interest credit cards. All right. So use what's in your hand. So making money with what you already own or rent. So consider moving with family and friends. Now, let me just tell y'all, you can't move with everybody. You might create more problems than it's worth. I'm gonna be honest, I've been blessed. I would say assess carefully your options for living with somebody and make sure you got a move in and a move out date and everybody understands what those are, because you don't want to ruin any relationships while you're on your way to meeting your financial goals. So that's just my disclaimer. If you do have an extra room in your house, because Airbnb is changing the game for everybody, let me tell you. Even when I was traveling around the world, I would rent rooms in people's houses versus renting out the entire house. And I only stayed with women once I started traveling. But Airbnb, vacation rentals, home away, and there was a Black one now, and I haven't used it in a while, but it was called Inclusive. The other thing that I use, so over these 6 months, the first month that I decided to go away is I house sat. Anybody? They be like, Black people don't do that.
Yes, I do it.
I house sat.
Walk a dog, stay for free.
See? High five, girl. Do you use trusted house sitters or Mind My House?
Trusted house sitters is mine. I even do it when I go visit family, so I don't have to stay with my family members.
Smart girl. It's another way to save tons of money. There is an annual membership, but it's worth it. And so that's another travel hack, is to do house sitters and also woofing. Now, woofing is where you work in exchange for boarding. And if you that adventurous type, like I was in Australia and I decided Yes, Trusted House Sitters by Stephanie Perry on YouTube. All right, Layla. Yeah, so I considered woofing. I went to visit the farm and I was like, nope.
But you had an open mind, which is most important.
A lot of open mind. I tried. This is what I'm saying to you. I wasn't perfect, but the journey to getting to where I was trying to go to changed my life. It really did. And so here's a bonus case study, true story. One of my girlfriends invited me. She was living in Canggu in Bali. And she was like, they do these. So in Bali, you can't own the land. You can do a long-term lease. A lot of Asian countries do that, where they'll give you a 50-year lease, a 75-year lease, but you can't own it outright, right? Kind of like what Mayor Daley did with our parking here in Chicago. Who gives people a 75-year lease on parking? But I digress. So she said, I want you to be my business partner. I have the opportunity to rehab this 2-bedroom, 2-bath with a swimming pool villa that rents for $5,000 a year. Now y'all do the math. Long-term lease for 5 years. Me and her split the $5,000, and the 2-bedroom, 2-bath rented for $110 a night on Airbnb. Ma'am, so you list the villa for $100 a night, 55 nights rented per year is the cost of the rent. Everything after that is profit. We got a local dude here in my phone to this day. One was the driver that would go pick the people up from the airport, and the other one would come and she had a Noman was the maid, and she would come and clean up. I stayed for 3 weeks. And then after that, she would come and clean after people came and went. And so that was another source of income once I started traveling. So when you enter into an agreement like that, you just want to make sure that there's no prohibition of sublets or rentals in the rental contract before you sign. They doing that in the United States. I just rented an Airbnb in DC 2 weeks ago from a young girl. Young, over by GW. She subletting and she said, please don't go to the leasing office. They're not involved in the business deals. I got you.
I know what you're talking about.
Hey, I've been there. I've done that. So I like I said, I was able to save $30,000 in 6 months. It was one of the most challenging things in my life, but I was able to travel for almost 2 years, 22 months full-time, 37 countries. And I didn't even spend all my money. I didn't come home broke. And so I would say to anybody, particularly as because I am in the group and we talk about FIRE, I'm not retiring in the United States. It's too risky for me. I've identified some countries that I know has solid healthcare because that's always a concern when you're getting older for me. But it breaks my heart that my father had to file bankruptcy when my mom died of breast cancer, right? And her dad became his dad. And my dad died of lung cancer. And so he ain't had no wife. But at the end, I was like, well, Daddy, we need to pick a different insurance. He was like, I'm not paying for nothing. But it's terrible that you work your whole life and one medical illness can wipe your money out in the United States. So that's one of the primary reasons why I am planning to retire abroad because of healthcare and healthcare costs. So somebody said, amen. I'm just looking in the chat.
Oh. And I'll piggyback on that. I don't know how many people in the group know. I took a month off and travel. I did 3 countries. And in my last country, I broke my ankle and my leg in Morocco and had to go to the hospital, clearly, and had to go through the whole process. I had travel insurance, thank goodness, so they took care of the cost. But I remember going back and forth and they requested all of the documentation in English. Well, that wasn't possible. So the guy over the phone says, well, if you need to wait for our translator to translate the documents, it'll be a few more hours. So by then I was ready to go. So I said, well, how much is it? I'll just pay, let them reimburse me. And I look at it and I'm like, is this bill in euros or is this in dollars? And when he said, no, it's in dirhams, which is the local currency, I'm like, you mean I saw a specialist? I was in the emergency room. I had x-rays. I got a cast, got some crutches, $400. I'm like, that's less than my copay would have been in
Ma'am,
the States.
your copay for one visit, for
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was like, okay, I'm gonna pay this. I'm gonna go ahead and get out of here. I'm gonna go get something to eat now. Yeah. Like ridiculous.
Yeah.
The amount difference in terms of, I mean, I feel like I've paid more than $400 just on physical therapy in the last few weeks. Yeah. Crazy.
I paid $400 just on labs. It's definitely, and as a nurse, it's my priority for my lifestyle. And I don't want to budget for healthcare costs in my retirement. Like, I don't want to, that's not something I want to think about, honestly. But Layla says, I am loving with everything that's Black expat, digital nomads living abroad. We Black Americans have options. There are countries who love us and are welcoming. Amen. And it says, just wanted to share with all my sisters about Exodus Summit by Stephanie Perry and Sheeta's on the Loose, September 24th, 26th. It's a wealth of information we can use.
There's so much information out there. And it's so many of us. I love what you talked about is kind of your line of vision was limited by your parents. And so many of us, and especially as Black people, as Black women, we are like, oh, well, I saw so-and-so and I'm doing better than that. But there's even more. There's even a step further, so much further than we can actually go. And part of that is just seeing it. And so seeing visions of you and saying, oh, wait, I can do. And seeing visions of so many other people. I mean, Layla, you talked about Black Expat. We had the founder of the Expat App on, who's in Portugal, and she just recently got her permanent residency. And it's really just showing that it can happen, and it can happen for people who look like us, who they don't have to wait until they're 50 or 60. We really can forge the life that we envision and walk away from the stress that's killing us, and really kind of lead the life that we envision that makes us want to get up out of bed every morning.
100%. And it starts off with giving yourself permission to just go see. That's why I love your group so much, because I'm so motivated by the other women that are in the group. Because I'm like, wait, they like $1 million? Like, my father retired in 2000, and I want to say he retired in 2000 and maybe 13 or 14. And he worked as a gas laborer his whole life. And he retired with like $280,000, something. Or he had blown through that money in 5 years, would not listen to me, because the emotional deficit that he had, it was always like, I'm like, Daddy, you driving an Escalade. I can't afford an Escalade. How you, sir? It's $80 to fill up this Escalade. I deserve it. You do deserve it, Daddy, but you can't afford it. Like, that emotional pain, that's why I started with that, particularly for Black people, and we've been living in this oppressed state. Man, we have to figure out how to nurture our wounds, because it really does impact our physical fitness. And that's unique to us, because when you are devalued over time, you start to look for these external validators to help you believe that your personhood is valuable. So that's why I started off with those stories. And I like to share that, because I had to overcome that.
I think that's big when you say nurture your wounds. It's something we don't even, especially as Black women, we are so known to make it happen, to work through it, put on a smile, to grind it on out, all those kind of things. And it's like, even just to acknowledge your burnout, to acknowledge your stress. I mean, Yeah, that in and of itself is huge. I had to write that down. Nurturing your wounds.
Nurturing your wounds. Black women need nurturing. And I think I have a mentor that always talks about, I got to put my big girl panties on. We all have to put our big girl panties on. Who told you that when you get to a certain age, you don't need nurturing as a woman? We need to nurture each other. We need to be committed to creating safe spaces so that you can talk about your goals. You can talk about your deficits or your perceived deficits. And then you can have a level of accountability. I'm telling you, Roz, being in this group has inspired me, stretched me, because from my level, I've traveled to all these countries. I'm not doing terrible, but I'm gonna tell you, I ain't had no $2.5 million goal. I'm just I'm straight. But being around, these women in this group, I'm like, let me step my game up. Like, let me get my act together. You know what I mean? And so there's the Bible says iron sharpens iron. The truer words have never been spoken, and it's not in a competitive sense as much as it is an exposure, right? And getting a better understanding of what can be, and what can be, what is true for you. That's the other part about this whole mindset and limiting beliefs, and challenging what the other part of my journey is what I thought I needed in money, I got in relationships. Do you know how many people I met? Place to stay for free, fed me. As I'm having all this anxiety, as I'm stepping out on faith, God would just send people out the sky and be like, help her, because this baby, she over here losing her mind. Because I only see it coming one way. And yeah, I want to be financially independent, but you know what I want more than that? I want community. I want Roz to call me, and I want us to be able to bond to the level where I can show up for you in a meaningful way, no matter where you are in the world. Because that's something money can't buy. So I'm here to talk about money, but I'm also here to talk about the things that we think we need, that we think money is going to get us, that we can get anyway. Because that was my biggest transformation, right? Because I'm freaking out. I had never not worked since I was 17, and I'm just going to be like, just withdraw money out my savings, the only girl with no parents. Yeah, okay. No. But God was
like, that I had to write that down. What I thought I needed for money, I got in relationships. I'm like, girl, I'm about to put that on the wall. Yes,
it's true.
And see Shar over here, and Shar, who is the creator of the Expat App, make sure you go download it. I remember when I talked to her a few months ago, I said, girl, I'm gonna come see you. And I don't think she believed me. And I was like, I'm gonna be in your city next week. And your city is in Lisbon, Portugal. But it's truly the love that I think doesn't exist among anyone else as much as us. We understand and value community like nobody else. And the ability to just uplift and share these experiences and share the how and the why, and just encourage each other. And I love that. And definitely your book too. You got to tell us about.
I do. So on my journey, I was collecting quotes, and I wrote a book, published it this year. It's called Words of Wisdom from Women Around the World. And basically, this book is a journey of self-discovery, because just like I said before, I'm meeting women from all over the world that have very similar experiences that I have had, but I thought they were unique to me because I'm a Black woman from the South Side of Chicago. But I recognized in storytelling and in the sharing of quotes that there are a lot of similarities in women, and that what we lack, what I was missing, was this multicultural intergenerational exchange. You know how you heard my mama used to say, the best lesson is a bought lesson, but you don't have to buy everyone. She used to say that every single day. And so meeting another woman that gives me a quote in Swahili, or gives me another quote in Bimba, or another quote in German, and it mirrors a quote that I heard growing up, it formed these uncanny bonds, right? Because I'm able to see myself in her. And then we start to share, and she can see herself in me. And then all of a sudden, that's what I mean by the connection. Then it's like, girl, we got an extra house. We got an extra house on the coast in Greece. You want to stay there for free for 3 weeks? Ma'am, I sure do. I do. True story. I do. I met a lady one time and we talked and she said, call me when you get to Europe. I'm going to meet you. And when I got to Europe, she wasn't there, but she said, you know what? What you doing in 2 weeks? I got this villa and nobody's in it. Would you like to stay there? I know you weren't trying to go to Greece. Ma'am, do you think I'm going to turn down free housing? But it's about the connection, right? Susan Chin. It's about the connection and being able to build bridges. And so this book is my passion project. I've been calling it my group project because I'm just the one that collected the quotes. But what I like about it is there is the quote on one side. I don't know if you guys can see it, but each unique quote is typeset. And then there is a journal entry over here. So you can write what you think about the quote. So this particular quote was given in Swahili. So you have the Swahili translation at the top, and then you have the English translation here. And then you have what I think the quote meant, who the quote is by. This is also a girlfriend, Lorna, who's from Nairobi, Kenya. It says where she's from. She's a Lua, and she's from Kisii, Kenya, right? So the book has, I think it's like 40 quotes, and they all are given in various languages from women around the world.
Now, how do we get the book? You got to tell us that.
You get the book. You can pre-order your signed copy at Words of Wisdom from Women.com. So I'll put it in the chat, Words of Wisdom from Women.com. And yeah, that's how you get it.
Now, when you think back on this journey where you're like, I'm gonna get rid of everything, I'm just gonna step out. Did you, one, think you were going to be gone almost 2 years? And then two, what's something when you think about it, maybe you should have done differently on that journey?
Girl, I wasn't trying to come back. I came back on an emergency. My godmother got sick and I was her medical power of attorney. Girl, they had to trick me to get me back here. So I was making this thing work. I started a business coaching women. I still do have that in addition to working my corporate job. But yeah, I found freedom in my soul. That emotional healing, you can't make that up. I want everybody to experience that. So I wasn't trying to come back. Let me say that. The second thing is, what would I have done differently? I was blessed. I wouldn't have done anything differently. Now, let me tell you, I met several women that were doing the same thing that I was doing, but they didn't have the level of planning and they didn't have a safety net, right? So I said I was a planner. So I created all of these templates, like giving up control. Listen, if I got married tomorrow, this is for my single ladies, all the single ladies. Listen, if I married somebody, the love of my life tomorrow, he still can't be my medical power of attorney and he can't be my financial power of attorney. He can be my husband, but he not gonna trump 25 years relationship with my best friend who happens to have 2 degrees in finance, who has my passwords to everything. Because you my husband, you might leave tomorrow. I'm sorry. You're not gonna trump that. My best friend whose house I'm at now, who's a medical doctor, ER doctor, she's gonna, if I married you, you're not gonna trump this medical doctor over here with 18, 25 years experience. Sorry. So having that kind of legal structure around me when I traveled allowed me to have these aha moments, because everything didn't go right, but I can tell you that I did not find myself in a situation that I wasn't prepared for. Like I was in Egypt and the people wouldn't take my money. I had to call Rochelle and she had to transfer some money because they would not take my cash money. They wanted me to pay by credit card or something. And I think I had lost my card, and she was able to transfer the money via wire transfer to them because she had the passwords and it was taken care of. Girl, I had to bribe somebody and I called on WhatsApp. I was like, I got $500 in my shoe. She like, don't tell him. Just stay on the phone with me. Girl, that's the next book of all these shenanigans that I got myself involved in. But I wouldn't change anything. It grew me up. It grew me up emotionally. And it really grew my faith up. Like, you could drop me now in my heart. You could drop me in the middle of the desert and I'm gonna be okay. I don't know how, but I know God gonna make a way for me. And I was traveling with all these skincare products because I used to have all these regimens and stuff. And so half my suitcase was shea butter.
You can use it for everything.
So, I realized that the stuff that I thought I really needed, I didn't need them. I didn't need it.
And that's a word in and of itself. Mm-hmm. I love it. And I know we've had a lot of people over on the Facebook chat talking about how they're getting a lot from this and the experience and just the ability to relate. I think the thought of it is scary. And I had a conversation about like even simply solo travel. So people are like, oh my God, I could never. And it's just the thought of it. But the more we see women who look like us, do things that we didn't think were possible, I hope more and more of us are able to then step out and do things that we didn't think or see as possible before. And so I love, love, love your journey. I can't wait to see you in a few weeks. People think I say this almost everybody. People think I be lying, and I'm like, no, like I'm gonna see you in a few weeks. For sure. I'm trying to think if there's any speaker that I've said that to and I haven't. I'm like, no, I'm gonna see you too.
And I met Christy Rutherford, who was on you. I met Christy years ago. Somebody introduced me to her. Probably about 3 or 4 years when I first came back to Chicago for the emergency. And so these circles are so small, but I think the kind of women that are pushing the envelope and pushing the belief systems, we will always find each other because that's the kind of energy that we have. And I think I'm really grateful that I can share because I had a whole meltdown before it was time for me to go. Oh, I'm crazy. Well, my brother was like, well, you ain't got to go. Ain't nobody gonna think no less. I was like, well, who does this? Like, I didn't have anybody to see. And here's what else. I was a geriatric traveler. Let me tell you, in other countries, they consider you a youth up to the age of 35. So you can get work permits. You can have access to all these programs as a youth up to the age of 35. Well, ma'am, I was 38. So 38, I think I was 38. And so I was like, first of all, I'm too damn old to be staying in a hostel. That's that part. Second of all, I thought that I was going to, be able to like really rough it. And then it was messing with my emotions. So I had made these deals with myself that I could stay in certain Airbnbs and rent a room. But like once a month, I was checking into a 5-star hotel with a bubble bath. You gotta listen, you still gotta be yourself, right? And that was also, so if that my biggest lesson was I was fighting my own judgments of myself. You can have some goals, but at the end of the day, you gotta make peace with who you really are. And then you gotta align your goals to reflect who you are, not you trying to be somebody else and then set a goal. That was a major lesson for me. That comparison is the thief of joy. There's a quote in the book that Masunda gave to me in the 11th month. That's something that I'll also say to everybody that's listening to the sound of my voice. If you feel like there is something that is pulling you to do something and it's frightening and it's scary, sometimes the answer doesn't come right away. It may take months, but there's these series of events that get you ready for the answer or for the thing that you really need. And for me, my healing, my emotional healing came at 11 months after I bought a one-way ticket to Australia. And the girl stands in her living room and says, when you see a nice house, just admire the roof. Man, what? When you see a nice house, just admire the roof. I was confused. I didn't know what she meant. And I said, what does that mean, Masunda? And she says, in my language, she said it in Bemba, And she said, it means, you know, when you see a nice house, the only thing you could be sure of is that it has a roof on it. You don't know the condition of the roof. It could be a shoddy roof, a leaky roof. The inside of the house could be all the way down to the studs. It could be flooded, all of that. The only thing you could be sure about it is that it has a roof on it. And as she was explaining it to me, I heard comparison is the killer of joy. Now, let me tell you, you know, you done heard comparison is the thief of joy 1,000 times, but in that moment, something about her storytelling, something about all the stuff that I had gone through that got me to that moment, when she said it, something quickened on the inside of me and said, Mable, you've been comparing yourself. That's what's going on with your anxiety. You've been comparing yourself to your dead mama, talking about when she was your age, she had 4 kids and a husband. You've been looking at life through the lens of your deficit and not through your blessing. Because I don't know nobody, me personally, that was able to travel to 30 countries in 1 year. And so the very things that I thought were God's curses on my life were actually blessings on my life, but it was the lens that I was looking at him through. And this girl and her sharing of her quote was healing to my soul. And that happened 11 months into me saying yes to the journey. So I want to encourage everybody, that thing that you feel like is too big for you, that thing that you feel like is unfathomable and that you don't know anybody else that's done it, just take the first step and then walk with expectation. I promise you that you'll get what you're supposed to get.
That was a whole word. Now, if y'all missed church yesterday, go on count this. This is a whole sermon right here. Go on count that. Pass the plate. I want to thank you so much. Absolutely. From the very first time we chatted a long time ago and we had our book clubs and so forth, there was definitely that connection. And like I said, so many of the women that I've met through the group, when I talk about kind of where I'm going and loving to hear the stories of where you're going and how we can help. I know a few people have talked about, you know, they're on their journey and so forth. Let us know how we can help. Honestly, like 100%. Share what we can do, because really we want to lift you. And if we can connect you, please let us know. And so buy the book. The link is in the chat.
Buy the book. Like my Facebook page, DiscovHer Life with Mable Taplin. Tell a friend to like the book. So ultimately, it's funny that you say that. My goal, this is a movement. My goal is to create a movement of wise women around the world so that just like you texting somebody and saying, I'm gonna be in your town, we all should be able to do that, because that also helps us to be fiscally independent. Why am I paying all this money to go and stay in a hotel when I got a sister friend? Because that's what was happening with me. As I started traveling, I would meet people and they would call in the head like, Mable was coming to your country, and they calling like, okay, well, we got a cousin with an empty house. That's what I'm trying to do, because that is how community operates. And somehow or another, I wasn't as receptive to it the first time somebody, I was like, I'm from Chicago, you know, I don't stay in nobody's house. I don't know, you got roaches? What you got? Lord humbled me because it was happening so much. I realized also that we're socialized in a society that's built on mistrust. And it was like, God, I gotta, if my insides feel okay with this person, why not? And I've developed some of the most fruitful relationships with women because they have invited me to come stay at their house. So this is a movement. And I want to say to everybody, you know, when you see me, I'm the same me on Zoom as I am in person. And yeah, we're gonna do this life thing together. We're gonna do it together.
And we're gonna celebrate together. Layla, when you get where we celebrate you too. So definitely, if there's something that we can do, please let us know. Please let us know when you're trying to do stuff. I know sometimes, depending on how you are, I know sometimes me personally, I'll talk about me opposed to saying what everybody else do. Sometimes you might even be fearful to share because you're like, well, what if it don't work out? I'm trying this big feet, but what if it don't work out? Share, let us know what we can do, because really and truly this community, I want it to be different, where we are truly putting our resources together to elevate all of us. So if there is something that we can do along the way, please share, please get the book. I'm gonna get my book and I'll be writing in there on somebody plane. Like, this is deep. And so, Mable, I want to thank you for being here with us today. I am so happy that everybody who came to share this experience with us, regardless if it's on the Zoom or in the Facebook group, be sure to join us next Monday. We have another great speaker when we talk about kind of how we're going to strategize this and what's your path going to look like, because I am anti-cookie cutter. My background is definitely wealth management, financial planning. I've been there, done that, and we do not go on the typical path, because we are trying to do something different and above and beyond what typical people do. So until next week, I want you to have a good night. Thank you again.
Good night, everybody.